Hello everyone. Tonight, we begin in a place where the walls are made of paper, but the silence is heavier than stone. You step through the outer gates of the Daimyo's estate just as dusk settles over the lacquered rooftops, and for a moment, the world feels soft, like silk sliding across your skin. The lanterns flicker low with pale orange light swinging in the windless hush, and the garden stones beneath your feet are polished like the bones of something old and forgotten. You don't hear voices. Not yet. Only the rustle of your own sleeves as you walk, measured precise as you've been taught. You're dressed in robes that cost more than your family's entire home. They itch. The collar presses against your throat like the fingers of someone you haven't met yet. You want to cough, but you don't dare break the perfect choreography of your entrance. A pair of attendants glide beside you like shadows, never meeting your eye. You will never see them again after tonight. Inside, the air smells of camellia oil and incense, something too sweet, too cloying, like it's trying to smother you in a smile. You pass sliding doors painted with cranes and pine trees, the symbols of longevity, though right now you feel very, very mortal. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, let me know where you're listening from, what city, what time. It always amazes me how far history can travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive at the inner quarters, where men do not go and women do not leave. A voice calls your name, but it doesn't sound like you. Maybe it isn't anymore. They remove your shoes first, then your name. You step onto floors that feel like velvet, the hush of the tatami pressing against your toes like a warning. Every sound here matters, every whisper, every creak of the wood, every pause too long. You've stepped into a place where your survival will depend on what you don't say. A matron with a face like carved ivory ushers you forward. You catch your reflection in a basin of water as you pass, its distorted trembling. You look like a ghost already. The room you're shown to is beautiful, of course. Painted screens, delicate brushes arranged like weapons in a display case. A scroll of poetry hangs on the far wall, something about a plum tree and snow. The bed is futon-styled, but softer than anything you've known. It's also not yours. Nothing in here is yours. Not the mirror, not the robe waiting folded at the foot of the bed. Not the name they gave you. Definitely not the night ahead. You sit, you wait. This, they say, is the beginning of honor, of proximity to power, of being chosen. Historians still argue whether becoming a concubine in feudal Japan was more privilege or punishment. But the truth is, it depended on the day, on who summoned you, on whether your body became an asset or liability. Outside the door footsteps, not hurried, not slow, just inevitable. You draw a breath. Do you feel powerful? You're technically part of the ruling class now. One of the inner women, one of the shadows behind the curtain. You've been instructed in all the proper behaviors, how to bow, how to kneel, how to smile with your mouth, but not your eyes. You know how to speak without saying anything, how to cry without making sound, how to make your presence feel like perfume, intoxicating, but not too much. Still, nothing prepared you for the taste of this room, rich, stale, and terrifying. Someone once wrote that the walls of a daimyo's house saw more tears than temples ever did. You believe that now. There's a peculiar detail in these estates. No one announces anything outright. Everything is implied, like the way a fan opens slightly when one woman disapproves of another, or how the incense changes when someone is mourning. Even your welcome into this house was more ritual than kindness. no smiles, only nods. A brief flicker of pity in one servant's eyes. And that was worse than cruelty. And then the door slides open. But it's not the Lord who enters, not yet. It's another woman, older, stately, terrifying in her calm. She's not the first consort, but she might be close. She appraises you the way one might evaluate a silk bolt or a painting. You do not speak. You bow, deep, perfect. The moment stretches. Then without a word, she places a single camellia blossom on the floor before you. You've passed the first test. Or maybe you've just been claimed. Nobody tells you what happens next. Not really. There are stories, of course. The lucky ones who rose to influence the courtesans, who whispered advice that changed battles, the consorts who bore sons and became legends. But for every one of those, a dozen more disappeared behind these paper walls, leaving only faint perfume and scandal behind. A quirky detail many concubines used to tuck a personal item behind their sleeping mat. A comb, a note, even a slip of cloth. It was their insurance, a way of saying I was here. I mattered. Of course, most of those items were swept away before anyone could remember them. You feel it now. The hush. The way this house watches you without eyes. The pressure of centuries pressing down on your spine. You smile as you were taught. Because this is the only time you'll ever be new here. And tomorrow you will not be. Tonight the candles are lit with purpose. Their flickering glow traces golden halos around the silk-covered walls, making everything feel just a little unreal. You sit where they told you to sit, knees tucked under back, straight eyes lowered. There's a soft tapping outside. Not footsteps, not voices. Just a careful rhythm, like someone trying not to wake the past. You were bathed earlier, scrubbed in silence. Your arms held up like a porcelain doll while two older women washed every part of you with cloth soaked in warm water and crushed plum blossoms. The smell clings to your skin now, sweet, sharp, and faintly sour. It's supposed to be alluring. You're not sure it worked. But it doesn't matter. This isn't about you smelling good. It's about you being ready. They dressed you in a robe that feels too thin for a night like this. The silk slides against itself with every breath you take, making a sound like whispers behind closed doors. On your lips, a thin layer of red pigment. On your cheeks, a dusting of crushed rice powder that makes you look paler than you really are. Like a porcelain figure. Fragile, hollow. The women said nothing the whole time. Not a word. Only the occasional glance between them, as if they were remembering their own first night, or wondering what kind of man would walk through that door tonight. And now you're here, waiting. Your mouth tastes of plum wine. You drank just enough to feel the blur around your edges, but not enough to forget your lines. You've been taught what to say, how to bow, where to let your gaze fall, what tone of voice to use if he asks you to sing. You're supposed to seem graceful and natural, like a spring breeze in a lacquered box. The door slides open. You don't look up right away because you know better. First the bow, deep spine curved like a crane's neck. Then stillness. Your heartbeat is suddenly the loudest sound in the room. The man who enters is not ugly, but he is old, older than your father. He wears robes of a deeper blue than any you've seen, embroidered with silver clouds. His face is unreadable, not stern, not warm. He doesn't speak, just watches you. For a moment too long. You remember something one of the attendants said in a voice not meant to be heard. The first time is a test. After that, you're either furniture or favorite. You're hoping to be neither. But you already know that hope has no place here. He pours himself tea. The movement is precise, as if he's performed it in war councils and poetry readings alike. He doesn't ask you to serve him, which is either a sign of respect or irrelevance. You can't tell yet. Then finally he speaks. Your name is Kade now. You nod. Of course it is. Kade maple leaf. Delicate crimson fluttering, easy to sweep away. He sits, and you sit opposite him, your knees beginning to ache. He looks at you as if you're a riddle he's already solved, but likes pretending he hasn't. He asks you where you're from, not because he cares, but because he wants to hear how you answer. You give the answer you were told to give humble roots no parents to mourn loyalty only to the house now. He nods. He knows it's a lie. He probably even knows your real name. But this performance is part of the evening. Like the wine, like the powdered face, like the soft candlelight that makes everyone look gentler than they really are. He drinks. He watches. You breathe. Historians still argue whether concubines in feudal Japan were considered property or political instruments. The truth is, on nights like these, it made no difference. He asks you to play the koto. You've practiced this piece until your fingers bled. You both slide forward on your knees and begin to pluck the strings. Your hands don't shake. That's something. The melody is a simple one. Gentle, repetitive, almost hypnotic. You keep your eyes lowered as you play, but you can feel his gaze on your hands, not your face. You wonder if he even remembers the name he just gave you. When you finish, the silence is too long. Then he says, "You may stay." That's all. It means you passed. Or at least you didn't fail. He leaves the room before you do. You bow so low your forehead brushes the floor. When the door closes behind him, you exhale for the first time in what feels like hours. A curious historical tidbit, many lords kept small ledgers, private books where they recorded each concubine's name, appearance, demeanor, and behavior on the first night. These weren't for sentimental reasons. They were records, assets, sometimes even future liabilities. You wonder what he wrote beside your name, or if he even bothered to write it down. Later, as you remove the robe and fold it the way you were taught, precisely respectfully, you find yourself staring at your reflection again. The pigment is smeared. Your eyes look like they belong to someone else. You touch your cheek just to feel something real. No one claps. No one congratulates you. No one even opens the door to ask how it went. You lie down on the futon. You stare at the ceiling. Somewhere in the garden, a bell rings. Not for you. This, you realize, is your first night in a world where time moves sideways. Not forward, not backward. Just side to side like a fan fluttering in slow motion. And tomorrow it starts all over again. The sun barely filters through the rice paper windows, and already the day is full of expectations. You wake before the bell, not because you're eager, but because you didn't really sleep. That's something no one told you, how light the sleep becomes when your life is lived behind screens and footsteps. The first order of business, the transformation. You're not allowed to be seen as yourself, not even here among the other women who know exactly what you are. The attendants arrive in quiet pairs, their eyes respectfully averted, but their hands merciless. They begin with your hair. It's combed, coiled, lacquered into a sculptural arrangement that could withstand a typhoon. But heaven forbid you sneeze. 2 small jade pins are inserted not for beauty, but because jade represents patience. You don't miss the irony. Next, the makeup. It starts with rice powder, pale and fine, applied in layers that leave you looking like a porcelain ghost. Then, the rouge, lips painted in a tight shape, just the center, modesty, always modesty. cheeks dusted like you've just finished weeping, but prettily. You're not allowed to smile too wide. It ruins the illusion. Then come the robes. Layers upon layers, color-coded depending on the season, your rank, and the mood of the day. Today's outer robe is soft green, signifying growth, though no one says whether that's a hopeful sign or a reminder that you still have much to prove. The final touch, your posture. You kneel before a low mirror while an older woman adjusts the way your shoulders slope and corrects your gaze. "Don't blink so often," she says. "It makes you look nervous." You nod. Then you bow. To your own reflection, the ritual takes hours. You've said fewer than 5 words, and already your body aches from stillness. The irony isn't lost on you. Life here demands both elegance and endurance, 2 qualities not often found in the same place. Historians agree that beauty in the feudal Japanese court was as political as any alliance. A single strand of hair out of place could mean you were not fit for presentation. A slip of speech could be interpreted as rebellion. And while the samurai fought with swords, women like you were expected to fight with painted faces and perfect manners. You're not armed, but you're not unarmed either. You are now ready to be seen. You walk through the women's quarters silent, except for the occasional rustle of silk and the sound of your own thoughts. Around you, other concubines move like ghosts in different hues. Some smile, most don't. Each one has her story, but no one tells them out loud. That's the unspoken rule: keep your elegance, keep your secrets. You pass a small room where 2 younger girls are being taught how to bow properly. Their teacher claps a fan sharply whenever they falter. You remember being one of them not long ago, back when you still thought obedience would be enough. In the main hall, you are offered tea. Not by name, of course. They don't use names here unless it's necessary. You're addressed by title, or not at all. You sip quietly, the bitterness of the green tea grounding you. You catch glimpses of the older women at the head of the room, their faces serene, unreadable. These are the long-timers, the ones who survived by adapting. It's here in the soft hush of the morning rituals that you begin to understand the game. Everyone is watching. No one is moving. One misstep can follow you for weeks. A poorly tied OB, a glance held a second too long. Gossip here spreads faster than fire and leaves deeper burns. But it's not loud. It's quiet, coiled, elegant destruction. You learn quickly, speak less, observe more. A quirky bit of court etiquette: you are not allowed to yawn in public. If you must, you cover your face with your sleeve and pretend to sneeze. It's not about hiding fatigue. It's about protecting the illusion that life here is effortless, that you float rather than trudge, that your beauty and grace are innate, not carefully orchestrated every single morning like a military campaign. Your lessons continue after breakfast. Today, fan language. Yes, fans. Because saying what you mean is for merchants and peasants. Here, everything is coded. A fan closed quickly can mean displeasure. Opened slowly, curiosity. Tapping it once against your wrist might indicate boredom. Tapping twice, danger, or flirtation, depending on who's watching. Your fan today is blue and white, painted with cranes. It's stiff. You're not sure what message you're giving off. Hopefully just unremarkable. After that, there is poetry. You recite 2 verses from memory, then bow and listen to another girl recite a haiku about plum blossoms falling. It's beautiful, yes, but also calculated. Every word chosen to impress, every pause timed like a blade's breath before the cut. Your voice wavers, the tutor says to you later. Be calm, like still water. You nod even though your throat burns from trying not to swallow too loudly. Historians still debate how much autonomy women in these positions actually had. Some records suggest concubines influenced the lords they served, shaped decisions, whispered strategies. Others say they were merely decoration. The truth, as always, is more layered. Like your robes, like your days. You return to your room after lessons and remove the outermost layer of silk. You're permitted to rest, but you don't sleep. Instead, you stare at the ceiling and think about the hundreds of women who came before you and how many of them were forgotten before the ink dried on the scrolls. The afternoon light fades, turning the paper walls a soft gold. Somewhere outside, a wind chime tinkles a sound both lovely and lonely. You think for a moment that you might write a poem about it, but then you remember that no one wants your poetry yet. Your job right now is to be beautiful and quiet. You sit and wait. Again, you are no longer called by the name your mother whispered when you were a child. Here, that name is a liability. It connects you to roots, to memory, to something dangerously human. So the house gives you a new name, something floral, something soft, something easy to speak and easier to forget. Kaidi, maple leaf. That's what they chose for you. There's something both poetic and cruel in the naming custom. You've learned that nearly every woman here carries a name gifted by the estate, a kind of rebirth, they say, a way to mark the start of your new life. But it also means no one here knows your real story, and no one wants to. You were born Megumi. You remember this like a warm bowl held in your palms on a cold night, faint, comforting, almost gone. But no one will ever call you that again. If they do, it's a punishable breach. The house demands detachment. The past is a distraction, and your future is curated. A curious historical detail in some feudal households, the renaming of a concubine was done through a ceremonial ink writing on a scroll, with the chosen name flanked by calligraphic symbols representing traits the Lord wished her to embody: obedience, loyalty, fertility. Occasionally, that same scroll would later be burned if the woman fell from favor. Today, your name is inked somewhere. You will never see it. It is strange walking through the estate and hearing people call for K-Day and realizing with a start that they mean you. It still doesn't sit right in your chest, like a garment tailored for someone else's shoulders. You tell yourself you don't mind, that names are only sounds. But when you hear another girl whisper her own secret name to the mirror at night just once, like a forbidden prayer, you feel less alone. Names are power, and losing yours is the first price you pay. Today, you are being tested again. A small gathering of senior women will be watching how you serve tea. It's a formal evaluation, though no one says it out loud. These women wear layers so deep in hierarchy, you're not even sure how to bow correctly anymore. You carry the tray slowly, arms, steady face, unreadable. The tea must not slosh. The cups must be placed just so. The angle of your sleeves must flutter gracefully, not sloppily. You kneel, you pour, you offer. A breath too long, and someone coughs. One of the women smiles at you, but her smile is a test too. Kaidi, she says, voice light, do you know why we wear so many layers? You pause. The safe answer is always humility or modesty. But today, for reasons you can't name, you say, because it hides how much we carry. The woman blinks, then nods. Good. You feel like you just dodged a blade. Historians note that within the women's quarters, known as the OQ, an intricate code of etiquette and speech developed. Some call it proto-bureaucracy. Others say it was warfare without blood. Everything was ranked: your robe's color, your food portions, even how close you sat to the window. And as in battle, one mistake could exile you. Later, you overhear two attendants whispering. One says the new girl has sharp ears. The other replies, sharp ears don't last long. They hear too much. You file this away. Another lesson. You begin to realize that silence is not emptiness here, it's armor. Every woman wears it differently. Some wear silence like a veil, soft and sad. Others wear it like steel. You don't know which you are yet. That evening, during your walk in the garden, you see something strange, a crane standing on one leg near the edge of the koi pond. Still, patient, regal. It turns its head slowly, watching its own reflection. You realize the bird is more like the women here than you'd thought. You begin to practice stillness too. Another quirk of the house, no one tells you if you've done well. There are no gold stars, no marks, no smiles. Only silence or consequences. You start to gauge success by the absence of scolding, the absence of whispers behind folding fans, the fact that your robe remains untouched on the rack the next morning, meaning you're still being dressed for the day. One night, another girl approaches you. She's older with laugh lines that haven't been used in years. She asks, do you miss it? Miss what you ask. Being seen as a person. You want to say yes. You want to say, I miss being called by my real name. I miss my mother's hands braiding my hair. I miss laughing until rice spilled out my nose. But all you say is, sometimes. She nods. Good. If you miss it too much, it eats you. If you forget it entirely, you rot. You don't sleep well that night. You dream of your old name whispered through a crack in the floorboards. When you wake, you're not sure if you dreamed it at all. The next morning, you bow again. You smile. You walk slowly, arms folded properly, expression serene. Kaide is awake. Megumi is asleep, at least for now. Stillness isn't something you learn in a single morning. It's a craft and art, and eventually a punishment. In this place, to be a concubine is to become a statue that breathes. Your body aches not from labor, but from its absence. You kneel again, this time in the receiving hall. The same hall you sat in 2 days ago for poetry recitation. The same hall you may sit in again tomorrow for flower arrangement critique. The floors creak like old bones beneath you, but you don't move. The weight of your body is folded into itself, ankles tucked, spine, straight eyes lowered. Your legs begin to tingle after the first 10 minutes. By 30, they're numb. By 40, it's pain again. You don't shift, not once. A swallow flies past the window, its wings sharp against the light. You envy its movement. Briefly, your hands are folded gently in your lap, fingers just barely overlapping. Anything tighter would look anxious. Anything looser would look disrespectful. This positioning took weeks to perfect. There is a correct way to breathe here, and you're still working on it. The teacher watches, a woman with lacquered hair and a voice like an unsheathed blade. You blink too much, she says without looking up. Control it. You nod once. Behind you, another girl sniffles quietly. You don't turn to look. That's part of the lesson too. Curiosity is weakness. Historians often remark that life in the inner chambers of feudal estates mirrored that of monasteries with strict daily regimens, quiet rituals, and enforced contemplation. The difference, of course, is that monks chose their paths. You were chosen, but you find strange pride in your stillness. It means you're learning, enduring, outlasting. The session continues. No one speaks. The silence becomes a living thing between you, all breathing slow and deep. Eventually, a bell rings. Dismissal. You bow, unfold your legs carefully, and rise with practiced grace. The pain rushes back into your limbs like angry ghosts. You don't wince. That too would be noticed. Outside, the air is cool, the stone walkways shaded by maple trees. Your namesakes. Their leaves are beginning to turn red at the tips, like fingers dipped in ink. One flutters down in front of you. You watch it fall, soft, unapologetic. Stillness is armor, you remind yourself. You whisper it beneath your breath like a mantra, a charm. The rest of the day unfolds in small obediences. You attend a lesson on incense recognition, identifying fragrances by memory alone. One smells like pine smoke in winter, another like crushed chrysanthemums. The instructor tells you this one is called Koro. It was favored by the emperor's 7th consort. You nod as if this will one day matter. Maybe it will. There's a strange fact you learned during the incense lesson. Certain scents were used not to calm, but to test. Some concubines were unknowingly exposed to blends designed to irritate the senses just to see if they'd react. A sneeze, a wrinkle of the nose, evidence of lack of composure. You inhale carefully. Later in the bathhouse, you sit quietly among other women. No one speaks here either, not out of fear, but fatigue. There's nothing left to say by evening. Your body, now unwrapped from its decorative layers, feels foreign to you. Your skin is yours again, but only for an hour. An older woman scrubs her arms beside you and says, "The first few months I dreamed of running." You glance at her, surprised by the sound of a personal truth. She smiles faintly. Then I realized there's nowhere to run to. You nod. There is no map for escape here, only endurance. Back in your quarters, you practice your bows in the dark. No one sees, but you do it anyway. Forward, deep, pause, return, again. A knock. A servant enters and announces a change in schedule. You're to attend the garden ceremony in 2 days. That means relearning the rules of posture for outdoor presentation. You haven't done that since training. The wind, the sun, unpredictable variables. It makes everything harder, riskier. You thank the servant with a bow. You memorize her face. Faces matter. Who saw you, who didn't? Who was kind, even once? That night, sleep comes more easily. You dream you're standing still in a field, and the world moves around you like ripples in a lake. Your feet are rooted, but your hair dances with the wind. You wake with a start, disoriented. For a moment, you don't know where you are. The paper walls, the scroll, the folded robe. Then it clicks back into place. K-Day. Today again. You dress yourself slowly. The morning feels heavier. Your ankles crack as you kneel. You hide the sound with a cough. The silence continues elegant as ever. You walk with the grace of someone who knows that every eye might be watching. Or none. Historians still argue whether the concubines were trained too hard or not hard enough for the roles they were expected to play. Some say it was theater without an audience. Others say the world was the audience, and you had no script, only instincts. Either way, you're learning the part. You kneel. Again. Perfect. Quiet. Still. The maple leaf drifts farther from the branch. You thought silence was the hardest part. But now you're learning it's something else entirely, the language of saying everything without saying anything. This morning, you're summoned to etiquette review, but not just any lesson. Today is fan training. It sounds gentle, even delicate, doesn't it? A lesson in how to move a folding fan, how quaint. But it's not quaint. It's war in silk disguise. You enter the room, and there they are, a row of seated women, each holding her fan, as if it were both shield and blade. They're older, sharper, practiced. The instructor, Madame Hoshiko, though she's only ever referred to in whispers, sits at the head of the room, her fan closed, like a threat. "Begin," she says, and the fans snap open in near-perfect harmony. It sounds like a whisper from the gods. You fumble slightly. Your fan opens too wide. You correct it instantly, but she notices. Of course she does. You're instructed to perform 5 gestures: the coy glance, the playful dismissal, the veiled refusal, the silent approval, the farewell. You mess up the 3rd. Your wrist was too stiff. It's such a small thing, but the room feels it. Again, Hoshiko says, her voice honeyed and hollow. Historians still argue whether fan language developed in brothels in court or in the minds of women who had no other means to speak. What is clear, it became a formalized code among the inner chambers of feudal houses. Women used it to flirt, fight, even deliver subtle warnings to rivals. You continue the drill. Your hand cramps. You smile anyway. In time, you learn to mask messages and movements. A slow fan-to-face sweep is flirtation. A sharp close is insult. Tapping twice means be careful. It's choreography for the invisible war no one dares name. And then comes the real test, a mock tea gathering staged in front of select, high-ranking concubines and one observant servant who will report everything. You're told say nothing. Use the fan. You kneel the fan resting lightly in your hand. One girl beside you opens hers before the host is seated. The room stills. Hoshiko's eyes flick toward her. That's all it takes. The girl is never called to training again. Your turn comes. You nod toward the head of the room, raising your fan to chest height, not too fast, not too slow. You offer a half glance sideways to the woman across from you, then lower the fan tip downward. It's an acknowledgement without surrender. A yes, I see you, and no, you don't scare me. It works. Hoshiko smiles. Not at you, of course, just vaguely. After the mock session, you're escorted out and you bow to the matron by the door. She doesn't bow back, but she doesn't correct you either. That's a win. Later that day, you're walking back to your room when a girl bumps into you in the corridor, too hard to be an accident, but not enough to cry foul. You glance at her. She opens her fan just slightly and raises it to eye level. A challenge. You respond slow and careful fanning downward. A refusal to engage. She clicks her tongue. You walk on. Welcome to the Shadow Court. It isn't the Daimyo you fear most here. It's the women. You begin to understand the rhythm of power. No declarations, no duels, just quiet, brutal elegance. A sleeve too far extended. A smile with too many teeth. A fan held open longer than necessary. Every moment is a test, and you're expected to pass them all without showing effort. There's a quirky piece of lore among the servants. The more fluttery a girl's fan movement, the more likely she is to end up in the archives of the estate forgotten. The ones who kept their fans closed, tight, and silent were the ones who lasted. That night you sit by candlelight and practice alone. Fan open, fan close, wrist soft but firm, eyes calm. You whisper to yourself, be unreadable. In the mirror, you watch your own expression as you move the fan. You see yourself change, not completely, not yet. But the girl who arrived here is folding away one layer at a time. You find a folded note beneath your pillow, not written, but drawn. 5 fan positions sketched in charcoal. Someone is helping you. Secretly, you don't know who. But it feels like a kindness, a rare one. You fold it up and tuck it into your sleeve. Tomorrow you'll use one of those gestures, and someone will notice. Maybe that someone will matter. You lie down, fan on your chest, eyes closed, heartbeat steady. You've stopped blinking too much. Today you begin to understand that survival doesn't depend on beauty or obedience alone. It depends on knowing where you stand. And that's no easy thing in a world without maps. In the women's quarters, hierarchy is everything. It's not posted on a wall. There are no nameplates. No formal titles spoken aloud. But it's there in the silence that falls when the first consort enters the room, in the way her sleeves are allowed to brush the floor while yours are tied just above the wrist. You've seen the other girls glance at her when they think no one's looking. Not with envy. Envy is too dangerous. With calculation. The first consort doesn't look like the fairy tale villain you expected. She's serene. Still. A single gray hair tells you she's older than she looks. She moves like someone who never doubts whether there will be space for her. You wonder if she started where you are now. This morning, you're summoned to the garden veranda to serve sweets and tea during the daily poetry circle. It sounds charming, picturesque, but everyone knows what it really is, a stage. You carry the tray exactly as taut arms, extended just far enough steps, small, but sure eyes lowered. You serve the first consort last, not because she's least, but because hers must be untouched by delay. She does not look at you. You do not exist to her. That's the most dangerous place to be beneath notice. Still, you pour her tea with hands that do not tremble, and she lifts the cup without acknowledging you. That's a test too. Behind you, another concubine stifles a cough. Too loud. A ripple goes through the group. You wonder if she'll be serving tomorrow. Historians often reference the okujutsu, the women who ran the inner workings of a daimyo's estate. Beneath the headwives and senior consorts were layers of courtesans, ladies-in-waiting chambermaids, and the shadow women, a category that included women like you, not noble enough to speak, not invisible enough to forget. It's a strange balance. You're not allowed to rise too quickly, but fall too far and you vanish. You've seen it happen. There was a girl named Sumir Violet. She arrived 2 months before you. Laughing eyes, loud laugh, always humming. For a time, she was everywhere. Then one day, she wasn't. No warning, no whisper, just gone. You once asked a maid what happened. The woman paused, looked both ways, then whispered, she forgot her place. You never asked again. After the poetry circle, you're called to attend to the consort's wardrobe viewing. This is a rare honor, or trap. She's choosing robes for the seasonal moon banquet, an event you won't attend, but your hands will prepare. You and 2 other girls are to assist with the presentation. You kneel beside an open chest, lifting each robe with reverence. They're heavier than they look, dyed silk embroidered with cranes, plum blossoms, phoenixes. Symbols of power. Each one carries a scent camphor lavender cedar. You unfold one robe too quickly. The sleeve brushes the floor. The consort doesn't flinch, but the attendant beside her inhales sharply. You bow low. Apologies, honored lady. She lifts her gaze for the first time. Her eyes meet yours. They are not cruel, not kind, just evaluating. She says nothing. Later, a folded note is left in your room. One line, the floor is not for silk. Remember this. No signature. Just ink. Another lesson. A curious custom in some households, junior women were assigned specific plants as metaphors for their status. Maple leaf, bamboo shoot, camellia. You suspect you are a maple not just for your fragility, but because you're expected to fall without noise. That night, you join the junior concubines for calligraphy. You write one character woo-moo, nothingness. You press the brush to paper, drag the ink slowly, a symbol of humility, of emptiness, of wisdom. But as you write it, you realize it's also the feeling in your chest. The girl beside you leans in and whispers, "She looked at you today." You keep your brush still. She never looks at the new ones. You say nothing. But the air shifts. You feel it. You're not quite invisible anymore, which means it's time to be careful. You wash your brush, dry your hands, fold your robe. You bow to the moon outside your window, just in case it's watching. and before bed you recite a single poem under your breath, one your grandmother taught you long ago. You do not remember all the words, but the rhythm still lives in your body. You fall asleep holding the fan under your pillow. Not because you're afraid, but because you're beginning to understand the game, and you plan to play it beautifully. There are days when it feels like no one sees you, and then there are days when you realize that being seen is far more dangerous. Today is one of the in-between days. You wake as usual before the bell, before the birds, before your dreams can finish forming. The room is still wrapped in darkness, the paper walls stained with the faintest hint of dawn. You dress yourself this time, slowly, methodically. Every fold of your robe feels like armor being strapped into place. The schedule today includes no summons, no assignments, no lessons, no attention, which might mean safety, but it also means invisibility. You make your way through the corridors with soft footsteps, nodding to no one. You don't need to be told you know your rank. You walk behind everyone. You speak only when asked. You eat after the higher women have chosen their portions, and you bow when they pass. You have become a shadow with good posture. It's strange, though. For a place so full of beauty, the feeling of being ignored stings more than you'd admit. You start to wonder if the maids talk more to one another than to you. If the gardener even knows your name. Then again, it might be better this way. Because once they do notice you, it's harder to disappear. You pass the incense room and see two senior women kneeling in soft conversation. Their laughter is as delicate as falling snow. You remember that once you thought this would be your future idle elegance. Thoughtful glances. A life of admired stillness. Now you know behind that laughter there's strategy. Behind that conversation rivalry. So you don't envy it anymore. You just watch. There's a strange detail recorded in one noblewoman's diary, an entry from 1712. She writes, "It is better to be beneath their notice than beneath their suspicion." It's scrawled hastily, the ink smeared, as if the thought itself were dangerous. You understand her completely. Around mid-morning, you're summoned not by a superior, but by the house physician. It's routine, you're told. All junior women are checked every quarter moon. You walk in silence through a narrow corridor that smells faintly of camphor and chalk. The examination room is cold. Not cruelly so, but it has none of the warmth of the other chambers. Just scrolls of anatomy sketches on the wall and a basin of cloudy water. The physician is an old man with a neutral gaze. He doesn't speak unless necessary. He checks your pulse, your breathing, your tongue. You submit like furniture. He writes notes on a thin scroll using a brush dipped in pale ink. Then he pauses. "Are you eating?" he asks. You nod. Sleeping, you hesitate. Then nod again. He studies your face. Your color is pale. You want to laugh. Everyone here wears powder to look pale. But this isn't powder. This is something else. Something deeper. "I'm fine," you say, because there's no safer answer. He writes again, then waves you off. You leave quietly, but something clings to you, the knowledge that someone has noticed. And not in the way you want it. The rest of the day passes slowly. You attend embroidery in the East Hall. The silk threads snag in your fingers. You smile politely when another girl compliments your stitching, even though hers is neater. Later, during the evening walk through the garden, you see a crane again, maybe the same one from before. It stands perfectly still beside the koi pond, its beak tucked into its feathers. You wonder if it ever feels seen, or if it prefers the silence. When you return to your quarters, you find your bedding has been changed. It's fresher, newer, a different floral pattern. No note, No explanation. Someone is watching. A curious rumor floats through the halls that concubines who fall out of favor are relocated, but not dismissed. They are simply moved to another wing, another household. Sometimes they become attendants. Sometimes they become mistresses of distant estates. Sometimes they vanish entirely. You don't know if it's true, but tonight it feels possible. You sit by the oil lamp, brush in hand, and begin to write a poem. Not for anyone else, just for you. It's about a girl who becomes a shadow so perfect, even the sun forgets she's there. You don't sign your name. You don't need to. As you lie in bed staring at the wooden beams above you, think about what it means to disappear while still being alive. About how easy it would be for the world to move on without noticing the gap where you once stood. But for now, you're still here. Still breathing. Still bowed. Still surviving. And that for today is enough. You learn quickly that the most dangerous things in this house are not swords, or locks, or lords. They're whispers. They move like incense smoke, slow curling, impossible to contain. You hear them in the way a door closes half a second too late in the glance, exchanged between two attendants who suddenly fall silent as you approach. In the way one girl's name is used just a little less often. Today you are assigned to flower duty. It sounds innocent enough. Arranging chrysanthemums and irises into shallow bronze bowls for the viewing hall. A privilege, you're told. A chance to express aesthetic grace. A way to be seen. Which is precisely the problem. You kneel in the corner of the hall surrounded by long tables and delicate shears. The flowers have been freshly cut pale blossoms resting in woven baskets like fallen stars. The scent is sharp and clean. Almost medicinal. You try not to breathe too deeply. One girl fainted last month and was reassigned to linen duty, which everyone knows is a polite form of banishment. Your hands are steady as you select the stems. 3 white chrysanthemums, 1 purple iris, a sprig of pine. You recall the seasonal rule's odd numbers, only asymmetry preferred, never 2 blossoms of the same height. You make no mistakes, and still you feel the eyes on you. Not the lords, not the consorts, the others. They watch from behind folding fans. They whisper into their sleeves. You can feel the ripple of curiosity and suspicion flow outward from your station like a dropped pebble. Why you? Why now? You were invisible yesterday. Now you're handling centerpieces for a gathering that includes the first consort, the head of the house's poetry circle, and a visiting cousin of the Daimyo. That's not an accident. There's a phrase spoken only among the junior women when no one else is near. The paper walls have ears, but the fans have mouths. Today both are wide open. One of the other concubines, Reika, a graceful woman with a sharp smile, walks past your station too slowly. She says nothing, but her sleeve brushes your bowl just enough to shift a chrysanthemum off-center. You fix it without pausing. No expression. She smiles over her shoulder. You've just been warned. Historians still debate how much power these rivalries truly held. Some argue the women's quarters were symbolic, disconnected from real politics. Others insist the inner chambers were the true court, the place where reputations were carved, alliances forged, and downfall scripted. You lean toward the second theory. This afternoon, you deliver the completed arrangements to the viewing alcoves. You bow as you leave each one a silent offering of respect to the room, or perhaps to the air itself. Later, as you pass the silk hallway, so-called because of the fabric banners fluttering from the ceiling, you hear a conversation through a barely open panel. She's been summoned twice this week. The new one, Katie. A pause. Too quick. She'll make someone nervous. You keep walking. You don't flinch. But you mark the voices. You've learned to store names and tones like coins. You never know when you'll need them. A strange custom, some women leave tiny offerings inside the garden. Lanterns' wishes folded into paper scented with clove or lavender. Technically forbidden, but tolerated. Tonight, you write your first. A single word clarity. You fold it twice. Slide it into the hollow of the stone lamp nearest your quarters. You don't light the candle. That's not the point. The paper itself is enough a secret gesture to no one and everyone. At dinner, you are seated a row closer to the central table than usual. No one acknowledges this shift, which is the surest sign it means everything. A girl beside you drops her chopsticks and doesn't retrieve them. That's another sign. You eat quietly. Bow twice. Exit early. Your hands shake slightly as you prepare for bed. Not from fear, from awareness. The paper walls are whispering your name. And that means you've stopped being a shadow. Which means it's only a matter of time before someone tries to blot you out. You sleep with your fan beside your pillow again. Not because it's tradition, but because you know tomorrow someone will test you. And this time, it might not be subtle. You wake before the bell again. But today the quiet is different. There's a hum beneath the stillness, a tension like the air before a summer storm. You sit up listening. Somewhere down the corridor, a screen door opens just a little too loudly, then shuts. Silence. The house settles again, but it's no longer peaceful. Something is about to shift. You dress with extra care. Your fingers tremble slightly as you tie your obi and you have to undo the knot twice. You choose the lavender sash today, not because of the season, but because lavender was used in old folk rituals to ward off envy. Not that superstition matters here. But then again, maybe it does. At breakfast, you take your usual place. No one speaks to you, but no one moves their tray farther away either. That's a small victory. You eat slowly, deliberately, as if you don't know what's coming. And then, halfway through the morning, scroll reading the summons arrives. You're to report to the south wing. You bow. You leave your brush on the table ink, still wet. You don't meet anyone's eyes as you rise. The south wing isn't a place you visit often. It's quieter, older. The screens are painted with faded koi and wisteria. This is where the first consort holds her private audiences. You've never been summoned here before. An attendant meets you at the entrance and gestures silently for you to kneel. You do. Perfect posture. Heart beating against your ribs like a frightened bird. Minutes pass. Then the screen slides open. And there she is. The first consort. She does not sit across from you. She stands. That's the first sign that this is not a social visit. She studies you for a long time. Her gaze isn't hostile. It's worse than that. It's unreadable. You've been noticed, she says finally. You bow deeply. It is an honor. She smiles faintly. Is it you keep your face neutral? Do you know why you're here? She asks. You shake your head. Of course you don't. She walks slowly, the hem of her robe whispering against the tatami. You're too new, too fresh. She stops just beside you. You can smell her perfume lotus and cedar. I was once like you, she says. Bright, careful, eager to please. You stay still, very still. And then I learned, she continues, that attention is not always a reward. Sometimes it is a test, and sometimes a warning. She places a small object on the floor beside you. A folded fan. You glance down. It's yours. The same fan you thought you lost 3 days ago. The one with the crane design and the tiny ink spot on the corner. You didn't misplace it. She had it. There are those who think you're rising too quickly, she says. You don't respond. There are those, she continues, who would like to see you. Adjusted. You bow again. I understand. She crouches beside you now. And when she speaks, it is barely above a whisper. You will not argue. You will not defend. You will disappear politely for the next 7 days. No poetry readings, no tea ceremonies, no garden walks. You nod. You will remain quiet, she says. And if you do this well, we will forget you ever disrupted the rhythm. She rises again. You may go. You bow so low, your forehead touches the floor. You hold it there until she leaves. The silence in the corridor feels thicker as you walk back. Heavier. You don't cry. Not here. Not where the walls can hear. You return to your quarters and close the screen softly. You sit on the floor, and you begin your 7-day vanishing. Each day is the same. You eat early alone. You read alone. You stitch quietly by lamplight. No one visits. No one speaks to you. It's like you've become invisible again. But this time, it's on purpose. A curious entry in a 17th century house record mentions soft punishments for concubines who disrupted harmony reassignments, isolation, reduced visibility. Not for disobedience, for being too memorable. On the 5th day, a small dish of plum sweets is delivered to your room. No note. But the dish is pale blue porcelain, used only by the consort's personal staff. A warning. Or a second chance. On the 7th day, you wake before the bell as always. But this time a scroll has been placed at your door. It simply says, "Return." And beneath that, as you were. No more. You exhale slowly. The storm has passed. For now. But as you fold your robe and prepare for reintegration, you realize something. They tried to erase you, but they had to notice you first. And you're still here. You re-enter the daily rhythm like a drop of ink into still water, slow, careful and visible. It's been 7 days since the consort's quiet reprimand. 7 days of silence, of solitude, of pretending not to exist. Now you're back. But not in the same way, because you understand the rules now. You know what happens when you shine too brightly. Today you're assigned to scroll copying, a humble task, a safe task. You sit on a straw mat in a low-ceiling chamber, hunched over ancient texts, dipping your brush into ink, and copying the words stroke by stroke. No embellishments, no errors, no personality, just silence. It's a test, of course. Everything is. The other girls around you are quieter than usual. No one asks you where you've been. No one comments on your return. That would be far too obvious. Instead, you hear it in the small things, the way they pause before speaking when you're near. The way a teacup is set down a little louder when you pass. You are a presence again, but not a threat. Not yet. The scrolls you copy are philosophical passages from old texts about order harmony and impermanence. You don't need to understand the words to feel their weight. One line stands out. The reed that bends survives the storm. You copy that line 3 times. Not because you're told to, because you need to remember it. In the afternoon, you're reassigned to incense folding. It's not glamorous. You mix powdered woods and herbs into small paper cones, each one wrapped in delicate gold-threaded paper. It takes patience and precision and the ability to sit for hours without complaint. You're good at that now. One of the senior women passes behind you and murmurs, "Better." You don't look up, but your heart stutters. It's the first word anyone has said to you in days. A curious tidbit from an old diary in some households. Concubines who re-entered the rotation after being silenced were expected to demonstrate not improvement, but humility. The measure of recovery was not how much better you were, but how quietly you became better. You're beginning to master that. That night during the evening tea, you're seated back in your original place. Not closer to the first consort, not farther away. Exactly where you were before. As if nothing happened. But of course, everything did. You catch Reika watching you. She doesn't smile this time. She tilts her head slightly. You respond with a perfectly timed fan gesture, half-open downward tilt. Deference, not surrender. She nods. Truce. Perhaps temporary. But a truce nonetheless. You remember something an older woman once told you. The women who survive here are the ones who learn to glide. So you begin to glide. You speak less, but with more weight. You smile, but only with your eyes. You volunteer for minor tasks, never too many. You offer compliments, never too loudly. You exist in the space between remarkable and forgettable. And slowly the tide shifts. One morning, a new girl arrives. She's young, pale-faced, terrified. Her robe is too loose, her bow too stiff. You watch her kneel awkwardly beside a painting instructor and fumble her brush. No one corrects her? Not yet. You remember being her. Later, as she wanders the corridor, clearly lost, you step forward. Tea chamber is that way, you say, softly gesturing with your fan. She bows, eyes wide. Thank you. You nod and walk on. You've become someone who knows where the tea chamber is. And that's no small thing. Historians still argue whether concubines form true bonds with one another or only alliances of necessity. The truth perhaps is that it varied. In a place built on secrecy, even kindness could be strategy. But tonight, alone in your chamber, you think about that girl. And you feel something. Not pity, not yet. But maybe a memory of yourself. You write another poem, short and sharp. She bent like a reed. They thought her broken. But she drank the next rain. You tuck it beneath your bedding. No one will read it. But you know it's there. And that somehow is enough. The house breathes in, cycles quiet mornings, silent meals, still evenings. But every so often it inhales deeply. And when it does, everyone holds their breath. Tonight is one of those nights. The lanterns are brighter than usual. The corridors have been swept 3 times instead of 2. The outer gardens are lined with low candles, and servants rush more quickly than they're supposed to. A visitor is coming. Not a lord. Not even the Daimyo's cousin. The shogun's envoy. That kind of visit can shift the earth under your feet. You're not summoned directly, of course. You're still too junior. But you're added to the support detail, the silent hands that make everything glide. You will help prepare the tea service. You will carry the lacquered trays. You will be seen peripherally, which is more dangerous than not being seen at all. You've learned that now. Your role is simple: present the Sakura pattern cups in a precise formation, refill the side carafe exactly once, and exit with your head bowed steps, even eyes never rising above shoulder level. You've done harder things, and yet your hands tremble slightly as you arrange the trays. The senior attendant supervising you, a stern woman named Omi, leans in as you work. "Keep your fingers straight," she murmurs. Curved fingers mean fear. You exhale and adjust. By the time the procession begins, you are ready. You take your place among the silent line of women waiting to be called into the outer chamber. The air is thick with incense, sandalwood, and myrrh mixed with something sharper. You count your breaths. 1, 2, 3, and then you're summoned. You step through the inner doorway, tray in hand, into a room you've never entered before. It is wide and low-ceilinged, lit entirely by candles and a few blue lanterns hung from carved wooden beams. The envoy sits at the head of the chamber. He's young, surprisingly so, and flanked by two quiet aides in pale gray robes. The first consort is seated beside the Daimyo. You don't look at them. You keep your gaze lowered. You kneel. Present the tray. Pour the tea. Your hands do not shake, not this time. You feel the envoy glance toward you. You feel the first consort glance toward him. But no one speaks. You place the carafe gently on the small stand beside him and bow deeply. Then you retreat. When you step back through the inner doorway, you realize your breath has been shallow for minutes. You exhale like someone surfacing from underwater. The other girls waiting in the corridor look at you just briefly, just enough. You did it. And now you wait to see what that means. A curious detail from estate records, when high-ranking guests visited some lords, would rearrange the room's layout so that their favored concubines were visible during tea service, but never too visible. It was a balancing act displaying beauty without suggesting possession. Every placement was calculated. Later that evening, as you return to your quarters, you find a gift. A simple one. A comb, lacquered black with tiny mother-of-pearl blossoms along the edge. No note, no signature. Not from the envoy. That would be unthinkable. But someone noticed. And they want you to know that. You hold the comb in your palm for a long time. It's warm from the wrapping cloth, and you trace its petals with your thumb. In this house, gifts are dangerous. They're either bait or beginnings. You hide it beneath your pillow. That night, sleep comes in pieces. You dream of cups tipping over, of fans opening and closing in rhythm of voices you can't quite hear whispering your name. In the morning, your hands are still steady. You've crossed another invisible threshold, and now you must hold that position without stumbling, without rising too fast. Just enough to be remembered, not enough to be envied. Historians still argue whether concubines who gained favor quickly were lucky or cursed. Many were promoted, more were exiled. A few simply vanished, no poems, no portraits, no mentions in the scrolls. You think about them now, and you think about the comb under your pillow, and you think I will not vanish. Not like them, not quietly. It begins as a whisper, a flicker of unease beneath the surface of ceremony and silk. You're late returning from scroll copying when the head attendant bows to you more deeply than usual. That's how you know something has changed. Deference, real deference, is never offered freely in this house. Not to someone like you. By the time you reach your quarters, the truth has already arrived before you. You are pregnant. You sit there in silence, the words still ringing behind your eyes, like a bell struck too hard. A single phrase from the physician. The signs are clear. No congratulations. No smile. Just ink on a scroll and a note sent to the consort's court. You thought your hands were steady before. Now they tremble in silence. Pregnancy here isn't a personal matter. It's not about joy or family or even legacy. It's about power. And you've just stepped into a game you were never trained to play. You are summoned within the hour. The first consort receives you in a small tea chamber, her expression unreadable. She doesn't ask how you feel. She asks, has it been confirmed? You nod. She studies your face. Then you will no longer attend gatherings. You'll remain in the inner wing until further instruction. A pause. You are now important. I suggest you behave like it. You bow deeply, but inside your ribs, 1,000 questions thrash. You're assigned a new room. It's slightly larger with a bamboo screen and a private basin. A senior maid arrives to monitor your meals and herbs. Suddenly you are protected. But not for you. For the child. The house doesn't care who you are anymore. It cares what you might produce. A son would change everything. A daughter might change nothing. And in the meantime, you wait. Historians often cite the delicate politics of concubine pregnancies. A child could elevate a woman to near equal standing with the consort or destroy her entirely. Favor was unstable. If a lord favored the child, the mother gained protection. If not, there are no scrolls written by those women. Your days become smaller, quieter. You no longer attend fan practice or incense training. You spend mornings seated near the garden path embroidery in your lap, watching the koi twist silently beneath the water's surface. The same women who once barely noticed you now offer soft bows in passing. One leaves a sprig of chrysanthemum on your windowsill. You're not sure if it's a blessing or a warning. You speak less, eat more, sleep erratically, and then one night you feel it. The small shift in your body, like a turning tide. Your stomach no longer feels like your own. There's life inside you, a flutter, not imagined, not silence, something real. You place your hand there in the dark. No one sees. No one needs to. A strange fact, some concubines kept secret names for their unborn children, whispered only in solitude. Not the formal names. Not the ones the lords would later choose. Just syllables, soft, sacred theirs. You try one. Wren. Just a whisper. No one hears it but you. Later during your afternoon walk, you see Reka again. She pauses just briefly and says, "They say it's a boy." You blink. "I don't know yet." She smiles, but not kindly. They never wait to know. The implication hangs between you, like a paper lantern, beautiful, fragile, possibly flammable. After that, your meals arrive warmer earlier. The servants bow slightly deeper. And one night, a folded paper charm appears beneath your pillow. A fertility sigil. You know exactly who placed it there. The first consort is watching. And perhaps, so is the Lord. You dream again that night, this time not of fans or falling cups. You dream of a child with your eyes and a stranger's voice. You wake up with your hand still resting on your stomach. And you think, "I am not ready." But readiness doesn't matter here. Only obedience, only silence, only what comes next. It begins with pain, low blooming steady. You bite down on the silk edge of your pillow and try not to make a sound. Because in this house, even childbirth is expected to be quiet. The room is dark. Only a single lamp flickers near the basin. You're not in the grand birthing chambers of legends. You're in a side wing behind a curtained panel with 2 midwives and 1 stone-faced attendant standing by the door, not watching you, watching for someone else to arrive. No one important comes. It's just you. And the pressure. And the pain. The midwives say little. Their hands are practiced. They've done this before. You are neither special nor strange to them. You are a body, a task, a vessel for something someone else wants. The hours blur. You don't cry out. You bite harder. You feel something inside you shift, something tearing, something final. When the baby is born, there is no applause, no chants, no music, just the rustle of cloth, and a silence that feels like it might crush you. A cry short, sharp, real, a child. You're too dizzy to lift your head. The midwife says only, "It is a son." Your world shatters. Softly. The air leaves your lungs like you've been struck. A son. Historians write of the political significance of such moments, of how the birth of a male child could elevate a concubine's status, bring her wealth, even allow her son to be named heir, if the primary wife failed to produce one. But they never write what it feels like to bleed in a room full of strangers and hear your life change without your consent. They never write about this. You don't get to hold him. Get to hold. They wrap him swiftly, efficiently, and the elder midwife nods to the attendant who vanishes with a bundle through the sliding door. You try to sit up. You can't. You whisper, "Let me see him." But no one answers. One of the midwives begins to wash your arms. Another places herbs beneath your tongue. Their movements are careful but not kind. They treat your body like a room to be cleaned after guests have gone. You lie there in the fading lamplight, the weight of emptiness pressing against your ribs. A son, and not a hand offered in comfort. A curious tradition in many elite households. Concubines were denied contact with their children for the first 30 days. The baby was placed under the care of a wet nurse or nanny selected by the senior women. This was framed as protection, but it also prevented the mother from forming too deep a bond. It kept her compliant. You are now both sacred and sidelined. When you return to your chamber, the bed has been changed. New linens. A pale blue sash left on the cushion. A sign. The household acknowledges your status. Quietly, your robe is now embroidered with a single silver chrysanthemum. Nothing extravagant. But it marks you as a mother. You spend the next days in silence. Not by choice, by decree. You are given healing herbs, bland porridge, and endless solitude. You listen for footsteps that never come. You trace the grain of the tatami mat with your fingers and wonder if your son is crying somewhere beyond the paper walls. Is he warm? Is he held? Is he still breathing? You don't know. You may never know. One morning, an old maid stops in your doorway. She doesn't enter, but she says softly, "He has your mouth." You choke on your tea. Not from the words, just the sound of someone speaking about him. Then she's gone, and you're alone again. You begin to write small poems, not for the court, for yourself. You fold them into thin slivers and tuck them between the wooden beams of your wall like messages to the past. One reads, "They took my name. They took my child. But not the night he cried, and I heard it." Weeks pass. You are called less often. You're not forgotten, but the spotlight has moved. You're no longer rising. You are stationary. And yet you are not the same woman who entered this place. You are a mother now, even if no one calls you that. Time moves differently now. You measure your days not in ceremonies or scrolls, but in fragments, the sound of sandals passing your door, the smell of soup drifting in at dawn, the shadow of a child, your child carried briefly across the courtyard by another woman's arms. He grows without you. You see him only from a distance. Once for a heartbeat, you caught a full glimpse, round cheeks, dark hair, small fists curled in sleep. You froze hands clenching the edge of your screen breath, locked in your chest. He was gone again before you could blink. You whispered his secret name Ren into your sleeve that night, just to hear it aloud again. You're not allowed to speak to him. That's not your role. You are not his. You are his origin, but not his mother. Not anymore. Historians call it protective distancing. They say it helped the child form stronger bonds with his caretakers, women of noble birth, chosen by the consort loyal to the house. They say it prevented women like you from forming expectations or ambitions. They say it made things cleaner, but it doesn't. It just makes them quieter. Today you're summoned for the first time in 2 weeks, not to serve tea, but to write thank you verses for a recent gift sent from a neighboring house. It's a meaningless task, but it means something. It means you're remembered. You kneel in the scriptorium with your brush and ink and copy 4 lines of verse. They are elegant, vague, flattering. Nothing too poetic, nothing too clever. The kind of praise that pleases without being memorable. You've gotten very good at that. Afterward, you're allowed to walk the north garden, alone. You take your time. The pond is still. The maple trees rustle faintly in the breeze. You see the reflection of a kite flying above someone's child at play. Not yours. Never yours? A curious rumor among the servants that some concubines unable to bear the separation would try to sneak into the child's wing at night. Some succeeded. Most were caught. One was banished. You don't ask if it's true, but you understand it. In the evening you sew. You're no longer required to, but your fingers need something to do. You embroider a small plum blossom onto a square of cloth white thread, almost invisible against the pale fabric. You plan to fold it, stitch it into the hem of a blanket the nurses will use. It's foolish, sentimental, but it's something. He'll never know it came from you. But you will. That night, a soft knock at your door startles you. It's one of the child's nurses, young, nervous. She bows quickly, eyes lowered. He's beginning to speak, she says. He says, son. Sometimes. You can't reply. Your throat closes around your name. Your pride, your grief, all of it knotted together. She adds, he's healthy, strong. And then she leaves. Nothing more. No gesture, no pity. Just the soft click of the sliding door returning to its frame. You sit there for a long time, in the dark, remembering the feel of weight in your belly, the pain in your hips, the silence that followed the cry. And now, son, you don't cry. Not here. Not where the walls remember. Instead, you write another poem. Quiet, simple. He speaks the sun, and I am the sky, never near, always watching. You fold it. Burn it. You don't need to keep these things. You only need to know them and survive. The days become mirrors of each other, reflections without change. You wake. You dress. You bow. You wait. There is no drama now. No summons. No whispers loud enough to chase. You are no longer rising, no longer falling. You have entered the phase every woman here both fears and longs for the middle. It is in some ways a relief. No one tests your fan gestures anymore. No one critiques the tilt of your calligraphy. Your meals arrive at regular intervals, and no one leaves strange gifts or folded warnings beneath your pillow. You are by all appearances settled. But even stillness comes with a price. You're fading. Not in beauty, you still maintain your appearance with the same daily ritual powdered skin, delicately lined eyes, robes that change with the season. You're fading in memory. No one speaks your name aloud unless prompted. The younger girls do not seek your approval. The older ones do not consider you a threat. You are part of the scenery now, familiar, neutral, safe, and deeply alone. This is where many women begin to slip, not because they are mistreated, but because they are unnoticed. You feel it too. The sharp ache of invisibility. So you make routines. You tend to the moss garden behind the bathhouse, not because anyone told you to, but because it grows quietly, and so do you. You sew baby garments when no one watches. Plain, useful, not for your child, for others, for whoever might need them. You recite poetry aloud when you're sure no one is near, not for performance, but for the music of your own voice, just to remember that you have one. A curious footnote in a 1680s journal, one concubine in Edo wrote hundreds of haiku over 10 years, none of which she ever shared. When her chamber was cleaned after her death, they were found tucked between tatami mats, stitched into robes, pressed into fans. It was her way of remaining somewhere. You understand her now. One afternoon, you're invited gently, unofficially, to sit in during a music practice. A younger girl struggles with the shamisen. Her posture is stiff, her fingers raw from too much tension. You don't speak at first. But when the instructor leaves briefly, the girl glances at you eyes wide. You kneel beside her, adjust her elbow, tap the neck of the instrument where she should hold. Demonstrate the pluck, like this, you say softly. She nods, grateful, surprised. Thank you, Lady Kade. The name startles you. It hasn't been used with respect in some time. You nod, then rise. That night you hear her playing again. Smoother, more fluid. You smile faintly. It's something. Historians rarely record the quiet influence of women like you, the ones who didn't stir courts, who bore no heirs of succession, who didn't fall from grace or ascend to legend. But perhaps their mark was made another way. Whispers, gestures, shadows passed down between folded robes. One evening, the senior maid who now favors you lingers longer than usual. She says almost absently, "He smiled today when the nanny mentioned your name." You blink. "My name." She nods. Not his title, not the boy. He said, "Where's Kade?" You inhale like someone drowning who's just reached the surface. That night you cannot sleep, not from grief, from being remembered, just once, by the one you're not supposed to belong to. You rise, light a single candle, and write in tiny brushstrokes on the back of a sleeve lining, "I remain." Not in silk, not in voice, but in the space a name remembers. You sew it shut. No one will see it. But that's not the point. You're no longer trying to rise. You're trying to last. Illness arrives not as a storm, but as a draft. One day your voice feels tight in your throat. The next your legs ache when you stand. You think perhaps it's nothing, just the season changing the dampness of the stone floor, the long evenings sitting too still. But then you cough. Once, twice, and the maid pauses when she hears it. The physician is summoned the following morning. He does not bow. He does not ask if you are comfortable. He places a dry hand against your forehead, then peels back your sleeve to check your pulse. His silence is long. "You'll rest here," he says. "The others have been notified. You will not receive visitors. Not even him." You nod. There's no room for protest in this house. Not for concubines, not for patients. They change your bedding again. Bring warmer tea. Adjust your curtains so that the morning light only reaches halfway across the room. You are cocooned softly, politely, like a dying pet in a noble household. And no one says why. You know enough not to ask. A historical note often found scribbled in the margins of estate logs, removed to the interior for her health. That phrase appears over and over again, across decades. Never a full explanation. Just that gentle euphemism, interior. Sometimes they returned. Sometimes they didn't. You are now interior. Your meals come in silence. You are not required to bow or dress formally. The mirror in your chamber has been taken away, not out of cruelty, but to spare you the sight of your own fading color. You sleep, not deeply, but long. You dream of koi, of falling maple leaves, of footsteps you can't follow. One afternoon, Reka appears at your door. She stands in the threshold. She does not enter. "You'll recover," she says plainly. "Don't get clever and die. It would be annoying." You almost smile. Then she adds, "And if you leave, who will remind the new ones to keep their elbows down?" She's gone before you can reply. It's the kindest thing she's ever said, and maybe the most honest. On the third day of fever, you hear footsteps late in the evening, lighter, slower. And then a voice, small, high. "Is Katie sleeping?" Your breath stops. A hush. Then the sound of a maid answering softly, "She is resting, young master." Young master, he came. Not alone, surely. Not deliberately. But still, he asked. And he remembered your name. That night, you press your palm to your chest. where the heat still burns beneath your skin. You whisper the syllables to yourself, not his name, yours, to hold on to something. The fever breaks slowly. You are not healed, but you are no longer hovering. They allow you to sit upright, to take soup with a spoon instead of a straw. The window panels are left open during the warmest part of the afternoon, and the light falls across your robe like a blessing. A curious note from an old midwife's diary illness does not humble women like Katie. It distills them. You're beginning to understand what she meant. One morning, as you comb your hair, a task you now do yourself slowly, with short rests between strokes, you find a single silver strand. Your first. You stare at it for a moment, then fold it into a paper scrap and tuck it beneath your bedding, not because you are ashamed, but because it is proof. You lived this long. You survived. Later, the maid sets a small bundle by your pillow, your old fan. Repaired, cleaned, still yours. You take it in hand. The weight is the same, but the woman holding it is not. By now, your quiet rebellions have taken shape in small gestures. Your poems tucked away, your fan folded with new precision, your steps measured like a soft drumbeat through the halls. But the world outside these paper walls is stirring. Rumors drift in on the evening breeze, talk of uprisings in distant provinces, lords clashing in secret battles, the shogun's court restless beneath the veneer of order. You hear the whispers as you walk the gardens at dusk. No one here speaks of them aloud, yet the air feels charged. One evening, as you arrange branches for the seasonal ikebana display, a new tension laces the room. The older women speak in coded phrases. The winds are shifting. Better to bend than break. Fate will favor the patient. You fold a chrysanthemum stem carefully, but your hands tremble. What does this mean for you? For your son? For the house? You recall an old tale during times of unrest. Concubines were sometimes sent away to quieter estates, to temples, even to cloisters, both for their safety and to reduce political complications. The fate of a concubine's child could hinge on these moves. And here you are pregnant once more. Or so you suspect. Your body betrays you again with signs too subtle to ignore. You don't speak of it. No one asks. You simply learn to hide. You carry the secret as you do your fan in careful folds close to your heart. At night, you dream of storms and falling leaves, of hands reaching and pulling away. Your breath catches when a messenger arrives with a summons from the first consort herself. You bow and prepare, knowing that whatever awaits it will not be gentle. When you arrive, she's waiting. Her expression is unreadable, but her eyes burn with a quiet fire. Another child, she states. You must choose your path carefully. You do not respond. She continues. If this child is born a son, the house will protect you. And if not, her lips thin, then you will need to rely on your own strength. You nod. The weight of those words presses down on you, heavier than any robe. You return to your quarters with your fan clutched tightly. You practice its movements more than ever, each fold a prayer, a whispered hope. Because in this world, every gesture counts. Historians still argue whether concubines held true influence through their children or whether their roles were confined by the Lord's whims. But what cannot be denied is their resilience, the quiet power of survival in a world that demanded silence. You breathe deeply and fold your fan once more. You can feel the house watching you. Not with eyes, but with expectation. Your belly swells beneath the layered silk robes. The curve of life growing inside you is both a blessing and a burden, a secret tether to a future you cannot control. The rituals around you continue unchanged and unforgiving. Each morning you rise before the sun. Each evening you bow beneath the moon. Your movements become slower, more deliberate. The other women treat you with a mixture of reverence and distance, as if your condition makes you both fragile and dangerous. You notice the subtle shift in their gazes. Sometimes they glance away quickly when they think you aren't looking. Sometimes you catch their eyes lingering longer than usual. You're no longer just Katie. You're the mother. The political value of a concubine's pregnancy cannot be overstated. A son is a prize. A daughter is a question mark. Your every action is watched for signs of favor or disfavor. One night during a whispered conversation behind sliding doors, you overhear the word heir. It sends a chill through you. You wonder who speaks it with hope and who with fear. Your health holds barely. The house physician visits often, his gaze clinical, but not unkind. He warns you gently about exertion, about diet, about the delicate balance your body must maintain. You obey. Because survival here is the only rebellion allowed. You find solace in small routines, folding your fan with care, memorizing new poems, watching the changing colors of the maple trees from your window. One afternoon, a young maid slips you a small embroidered pouch. Inside a pressed flower plum blossom. No one knows, she whispers. You clutch it close. It's more than a gift. It's an alliance. You realize finally that survival in this house isn't about standing out. It's about weaving yourself into the fabric so tightly that no one can pull you loose. And you are beginning to weave. Historians debate the extent to which concubines influence court politics. Some see them as pawns, others as queens hidden behind screens. You're not sure what you are yet, but you know this: your child will change everything. And so will you. The house is quiet, but never still. Every footfall, every whisper, every flutter of a fan is recorded by unseen eyes. You learn to move like a shadow, present but never permanent. You watch the new girls arrive, their eyes wide, their steps unsure. You remember yourself like that. You teach them what you can, how to fold their fans, how to bow without breaking, how to smile without surrender. One young girl, barely 15, approaches you one evening in the garden. Her voice is a tremble. "Teach me, Lady Katie." You nod. You show her the subtle tilt of the fan, the soft lowerings of the gaze. She listens, and you realize something. In this house, the strongest power is knowledge. Not the Lord's favor, not the consort's disdain, but knowing the rules, knowing the silences, knowing when to speak and when to fold. You are no longer just surviving. You are teaching. You are shaping. You are remembered. A curious custom among the women here, a secret exchange of poetry and gifts passed beneath sliding doors. Not for the lords, not for the court, for themselves. A hidden sisterhood of words and whispers. You become part of it. One night, you receive a small scroll. It reads, "To bend is to live, to fold is to endure, but to teach is to bloom." You clutch the scroll like a talisman and smile, because even in silence, you are heard. Historians still debate how much concubines influence the political tides. But the power of survival, the slow, steady accumulation of small victories, is undeniable. You are a survivor and a teacher. And sometimes that is enough. The light in your chamber softens with the passing seasons, shifting from the crisp whites of early spring to the muted golds of autumn. You watch the garden outside change color, the maples burning bright before their inevitable fall. It reminds you, everything is fleeting, even this. You find yourself reflecting on the curious layers of your life here. The rigid structure that once felt like a cage now seems more like a carefully constructed armor, forged by days of stillness and nights of whispered poetry. There's a quiet resilience in you that surprises even yourself. Your mornings begin earlier now with ritualized cleaning and careful preparation. Your robe layers are lighter, the colors chosen not just for tradition, but for subtle communication, a hint of humility mixed with a whisper of strength. You carry your fan like a shield, knowing its delicate language can wield more power than any sword. You notice the subtle changes in those around you, the way the first consort's gaze lingers a moment longer, the way Rika no longer wears her sharp smile, but a guarded expression. The younger girls look at you with something like awe or maybe understanding. You are no longer simply one of them. Your body has changed too. The fatigue sometimes lingers. The aches remind you that your life here is a constant negotiation between presence and absence. But you move with a newfound grace, a quiet command in every gesture. Historians still debate whether concubines like you had genuine influence or were merely pawns in a larger game. But you know this, your voice, though quiet, carries weight in the silences. Your presence, though often unseen, shapes the very fabric of this house. One evening during a tea ceremony, attended by high-ranking guests, you notice a subtle nod from the Lord himself, a rare acknowledgement of your existence. You respond with the faintest smile, a delicate bow, the perfect fan movement. It is a moment of victory, small but profound. You retreat to your chambers, heart lightened, and write a poem on the back of a silk handkerchief. In silence, I stand a leaf in the wind's dance, unseen, unheard, yet never lost. You fold it carefully and place it beneath your pillow, a reminder of your journey. As the night deepens, you feel a calm settle over you. The house sleeps, but you remain awake, watchful, steady, ready. For in this life of shadows and whispers, endurance is the greatest power of all. Today, a new challenge arrives, in the form of a message carried by an older attendant, a scroll sealed with the family crest. It is a summons to appear before the Daimyo himself, a rare honor that carries as much threat as promise. You are told to prepare meticulously, no mistakes. Your robe must be flawless, your demeanor impeccable. The lords do not tolerate slip-ups from concubines, especially not from those whose favor is still unsteady. As you dress, your hands tremble despite months of practice. The silk slides beneath your fingers, cold and smooth. You fold your fan, carefully repeating the motions you have learned, hoping to convey grace without arrogance. The walk to the Daimyo's chambers is long and silent. The corridors feel narrower today, the paper walls closer, as if the house itself is holding its breath. You arrive at the room where the Daimyo waits. His presence fills the space, commanding, inscrutable. His eyes scan you once, twice before he speaks. Kaidi, he says, using the name given to you when you entered this world of silk and shadows. You have shown resilience. The house acknowledges your strength. You bow deeply, heart pounding. He continues. There is a gathering soon, a council of lords and ladies. Your presence is requested. It is an invitation and a test. You nod, hiding the swirl of emotions beneath a composed expression. The days that follow are a flurry of preparation. Lessons in conversation, posture, and subtlety fill your hours. You learn which topics to avoid, how to praise without offending, and how to hold your fan so that it speaks volumes without a word. The day of the gathering arrives. You enter the grand hall, the air thick with perfume and quiet tension. Lords in embroidered robes converse softly. Ladies in layered silks glide past, their eyes sharp. You find your place beside the other concubines, some older, some younger, all carefully measured in rank and favor. Throughout the evening you observe. You listen, You fold and unfold your fan in coded messages, small signals of agreement, warning, or deference. A senior lord approaches. He studies you for a moment, then inclines his head slightly, a gesture of recognition that sends a thrill through your chest. You smile gently, lowering your gaze. Historians often note that Concubine's influence was most potent in such gatherings, where whispers carried farther than proclamations and a glance could shift alliances. Tonight, you are not just a shadow. You are a player. When the gathering ends, you return to your chambers exhausted but exhilarated. You fold your fan one last time and place it on your lap, feeling the weight of possibility settle over you. You are no longer invisible. You are no longer silent. You are beginning to shape your own story. The quiet rhythm of your days changes subtly now. You notice the way the attendant's glances linger a moment longer as you pass. The way the first consort's smile flickers when you enter the room. You are no longer just a shadow moving silently between screens. You are becoming a figure of quiet influence. Today, you are called to assist in the preparation of a special ceremony celebrating the autumn moon. The garden is alive with color, fiery maples, blooming chrysanthemums, and pale lanterns casting gentle light on the stone paths. You work alongside other women arranging petals with care-folding fans and precise patterns, and mixing incense that will carry through the night. As you move, you sense eyes watching not just those of the household, but of visitors from neighboring provinces. The event is more than a celebration. It is a display of power of alliances forged in whispers and shared silences. You find yourself standing beside the consort, her gaze sharp but unreadable. She speaks to you quietly. Tonight, every movement matters. You nod, feeling the weight of her words. The ceremony unfolds with delicate grace, tea poured with exacting hands, poetry recited in soft voices, fans fluttering like wings in a silent dance. You participate fully, your every gesture measured and meaningful. Later, as the moon rises high, the Daimyo approaches. He stops before you, his expression unreadable. "Kaide," he says, "your presence honors us." You bow deeply, heart pounding. It is a moment of recognition that fills you with both pride and caution. You know that every step forward in this house is balanced by the risk of falling back. But tonight, you savor the fragile victory. As you return to your chambers, you clutch your fan tightly. Each fold, each movement, each breath is part of your story now. A story of survival, of resilience, and of quiet power. The seasons shift again, and with them, your place within the house. You've learned that power here is not always loud or visible. Sometimes it is a glance exchanged, a silence maintained, a fan closed just so. Today, a younger girl approaches you in the corridor. Her eyes are wide with nervous excitement. "Lady Kaide," she whispers, "will you teach me?" You study her for a moment. She's pale, unsteady, like a sapling caught in the wind. You nod. Together, you practice the delicate art of folding fans, the subtle signals conveyed in a flick of the wrist. You teach her how to sit still for hours, how to bow, so that the weight of the world doesn't crush her spirit. As the days pass, you watch her grow more confident. She smiles more freely, her movements less hesitant. It reminds you of yourself long ago. You realize that teaching is a form of survival, a way to pass on strength without words. One evening, the consort calls you to her chamber. She speaks quietly, but with a new respect. "You have done well, Kaide," she says. "Your presence steadies the house." You bow, deeply grateful for her words. The house feels less like a cage now, and more like a tapestry woven with threads of silence, strength, and subtlety. Historians still debate whether concubines formed true bonds or alliances of necessity. But you have learned that kindness, even in silence, is a powerful thing. You carry this lesson with you as you prepare for the coming days. Each fan fold, each bow, each quiet step is a thread in your story, a story that you are still writing. Years have passed. The girl who arrived trembling is now steady. The house has changed, some faces gone, new ones quietly taking their places. You watch from the shadows, a silent witness to the endless dance of power and survival. Your own story has become a quiet thread woven deep into the fabric of this place. The fan folds you practiced long ago are now second nature, each gesture carrying the weight of experience. You have known joy, brief, fragile, and loss, sharp, lasting. You have loved silently and been forgotten publicly. Yet you endure. Tonight, as the paper walls glow softly in the lantern light, you sit alone and reflect. The silence no longer feels like a cage. It feels like a companion. You reach for your fan and fold it slowly, deliberately. Each crease a memory, each movement a breath. You whisper a final poem, soft as a sigh. In quiet shadows, I walked and I folded, not forgotten, but never told. You place the fan beside you and close your eyes. The house breathes around you, ancient and alive. You are part of its story now, unseen, unheard, but never gone.